In any life, we have highs and lows, light and dark, wins and losses. What happens when we encounter that moment in time when what happens next could change everything? Join us as we step into another person's inspirational moment and see how we can connect their experience to ours. This is Greg Stevens, and you're listening to A Shot of Inspiration. Hello, friends, and welcome to another Shot of Inspiration. My guest today is a very good friend of mine and someone I have a great deal of respect for. She's also a fellow certified master trainer with Crucial Learning and one of the best task jugglers I've ever met. She's just really amazing. This is my good friend and colleague, Ashley Galassi. Ashley, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, Greg. I am so glad to be here, and I would just like to echo so much of what you've just graciously shared with me right back at you. Just so grateful for our relationship and grateful to be here with you.
Thank you. And listeners, if you don't know, I'm part of Crucial Learning's Master Trainer Pool. I've been training with Crucial Learning since 2001. And I love all of the master trainers. And one of my goals on Shot of Inspiration is to eventually get every master trainer an interview, because I think that's one of the best groups I've ever been involved with. Everyone's got inspirational stories. They're truly masters in training crucial conversations, accountability, influencer, getting things done, and the power of habit, all of those classes. But beyond that, they're just great people. And Ashley, I'm so glad to have you here. Ashley, you have let's talk about this. Ashley has a new addition to the family. So
I
tell us a little
do,
about your
yeah.
family. I'd like the listeners to get to know you like I know you. So tell me a little about
That
your
sounds
family, when
good.
you got married, and the additions you've had over the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, my husband and I got married in 2018, and we knew that we wanted to start a family right away. So, we were grateful to have our daughter in I'll just call it exactly 3 weeks before the world shut down with the pandemic. So parenting probably looked a little bit different for us than what we had initially planned, but she was born at the beginning of 2020, and it's about 2.5 now. And we also had our son about 7 months ago, and we've nice little family of four here. So
That's amazing. I know you
yeah.
being cramped in one, having all that and having to stay secluded is very difficult, especially during the COVID time. So you probably loved it when they opened everything up.
You know what? It's been so interesting because, as you know, I had a balance before of working from home and traveling, and my husband had never worked from home. And since the beginning of the pandemic, we've been on opposite sides of our basement and working from home, parenting from home, all in the same house, all at the same time. So it's been really awesome at some times, and other times I'm so grateful that the world has opened up a bit.
I bet. I bet.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little about how you got involved with Crucial Learning, and then I want to talk about some of your stories about your personal experiences with the work you do, but also maybe some of the people that you've engaged with and some of the breakthroughs they've
Mhm.
had. So let's just begin with,
Yeah.
how did you get involved with Crucial Learning? I don't even know this story.
Oh, that is such a good question. So if I take it back to the very beginning, I actually was really grateful to be connected with a colleague in college, actually. We got in trouble talking during a class in college. And that is like, if that did not happen, I would not be where I am today. If my kids listen to this down the road, don't talk to people during class. But we made a personal connection during that class, and it lasted us really for a really, really long time. We worked together after that at a medical market research company together. And then he began working for the Chicagoland distributor for Vital Smarts at the time. And he said, you know what, Ashley, they've got some openings for somebody to help with the small business side of things, somebody that might be interested in training. Is that something you'd want to explore? And I went and met with the team, actually interviewed the morning after someone tried to break into my apartment. And but I still made it to the interview. And we just had these great connections that made a really wonderful start to my relationship with Vital Smarts. And after, working with the Chicagoland distributor for a long time, he moved on. And then I started working with Crucial Learning directly. And I'm really grateful to be where I am. I absolutely love being able to use our content, but then also being able to support everybody in our community, because I think that the work that we do is just needed so much in our world, to be able to have good skills to communicate and to set up our world in a way that sets us up for success.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, Ashley coordinates for the master trainers. If we have problems, we reach out to her. But not only that, she trains as well, and she wears a lot of hats. That's why my business partner, Jamie Beal, I just love her to death because she is a process person. And Ashley, that's what I see with you. You know processes, and I probably drive you insane because I keep asking you,
No.
what do I do here? What do I do here? Well, I sent an email out and did you read it? Probably, but I've forgotten about it.
No, that's what I'm here for, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there's so many things that have changed, especially if you look at just the last 2.5 years. So I view that as a part of what I can add to the world, being able to support our group, our community, and make sure that you and others have what you need to be successful. So
thanks. Well, let me ask you, as far as training, did you always know you wanted to be training and doing that work, or did that just kind of come to you?
that is a really good question. I always enjoyed having an opportunity to learn myself, and I've always enjoyed having an opportunity to facilitate small group discussion, but I had assumed that that would likely show up in the realm of focus groups or marketing or something like that. And was only introduced to this content and this space through my colleague. And so it was a really great opportunity for me to kind of initially take the content as a learner. And what I really found is that if I could harness the power of this content and not only start to use it myself, but help other people in my world start to use it, we could have different kinds of conversations, and we could show up in different ways, in ways that we wanted to show up. I think that that was my first taste of what training could be like. And then I had an opportunity to co teach a couple of times and step into the classroom. And once I did that, I thought, oh, I really like this. I think I need to explore it a little bit more. And I had my 10-year master trainer anniversary in August of this year.
Congratulations. That's
So it's
great.
been a long time. Yeah. Yeah.
It goes like that, doesn't it?
It does. It
It
really
really does.
does.
It does. Well, in the spirit of that, one of the things we always teach when I'm training people to train the work that we do, I ask them, you want to be a great trainer, live the work, and you really have to. But it's a higher calling, it's difficult, but it's also worth it. I think that's the biggest thing. Most people are really asking, well, that's a lot of work. Is it worth it? Yes, every bit of it.
Mhm.
So could you share a couple of things, how it's been that way in your life? And then we'll talk about others later, but how's it shown up in your life, the work that we've done? Do you have any stories around that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the first stories that come to mind for me tend to be more on the personal side. I very plain and simply would not be where I am today without this content. And it just given me the structure to respect relationships, respect people, but also start to learn to respect myself in ways that maybe I haven't traditionally. And there are, I think, some initial notions or reactions that people have when you say you teach crucial conversations. But for me, when I look at what this content and what this relationship has done for me, it's been all about navigating really tough situations, and not necessarily in the way that you had imagined a situation would turn out, whether that's previous personal relationships where you had all the hope in the world for you and this, significant other, but either you have different things that you want from life, or maybe they're struggling with other personal challenges that just have driven you apart. And you just have to be able to have the conversation and the space to say, I respect you as another human being, and I respect what you want out of life. And I also need to be able to respect and create a space where I can get different things that I want out of my life. I've used these skills in two really poignant previous relationships where if I hadn't had the courage and the skills to have those conversations, I would have never met my husband, or I would have never really, been able to step into a whole different space and conversation in life. So
Absolutely.
it's been really, really impactful. And it may sound like a very strong statement to say that, but I wouldn't be where I am today without it. So,
Well, I agree. I typically start my class with that whole thing that, you need to under promise and over deliver. And then I
mhm,
come out with, some people call this class a game changer. I call it a life changer. They never said don't set the
exactly.
bar high. But and
Exactly.
I back it up each time, and what I find is people will come back with their stories that confirm it over and over and over.
hmm
And I did a crucial accountability follow-up this week, and in the first day, one of their questions is, "How have you used the crucial conversation skills?" And the first girl
hmm
raised her hand, and she took it 6 weeks ago. She said, I told you back then my father was sick, had cancer. Well, he died
hmm
at the end of the month, and I got an entire week of using these skills and cleaning everything up with him. And she said I was so close with him. And she said, and I haven't talked to my sister since 2005, and she came
Wow.
to the funeral, and we've rekindled because I understood these skills. Now, I get those every week, and
Right.
and I know you do. What are some of your
Yeah.
biggest stories that you've gotten feedback on after people took the class? Because that one this week was one of the biggest 1-2 punches, and that was 6 weeks ago. And I thought, some people like, I don't have time to sit in a class, or I don't have
hmm
the money or something. I'm sitting there go, you don't have time not to. It's going to be the best investment you could ever put into yourself or your organization. So, what are some of the ones you've heard?
The very first class I ever taught, and this might be what drew me in initially, is after the first day, we did separated 2 days of training by 1 week. So the first day, week of going back to work, coming back into the classroom for the second day, and a gentleman walked in and he said, "Well, if I had these skills a couple of months ago, I wouldn't be getting divorced." And he said, "I want to talk to you a little bit about how my night went after I took the training and what would have normally happened and what was different about it." And he proceeded to basically say, normally when my spouse and I would get into some kind of argument, I would retreat to the garage and I wouldn't engage with them the rest of the evening. And he said, this time around, I literally just said, "You know what? I'm going to go through this process and I'm going to understand what am I acting like I want right now and what do I really want in a situation and in the relationship." And he said, just that process right there, I stopped and I said, what is it that I really want out of this situation at this point? And he said, I had a good conversation with her. He said, it wasn't great, but it was good. And I said, well, you're embarking on day two. Let's see if we can make it great. But that was from my first class, and it's always stuck with me,
Hmm?
as something that was really, really, important, just an illustration of how to use the skills. And the other one that comes to mind was actually for someone who I think was navigating what was told to them their life should be like. And I think that that's really, interesting for people to navigate sometimes, but essentially somebody who was not in a role that they wanted to be in professionally in their organization, and understanding that, yeah, this is maybe the path that has led you to your role right now in the career that you're in, but that doesn't necessarily have to be where you end up. And so having conversations with their manager about where it is they wanted to end up, what could they do in their current role to actually make some moves? And then also from a personal perspective and navigating some of the weight of other people's expectations that they had. And so those are two examples that I think I really encapsulate the impact of what we do. I think of both of those right away.
That's great. Thank you. I want to go back to something when Folks, I have my guests fill out different things on questions, and you talk something in there about being a people pleaser. And one of the
Yeah.
things I would like let's give a message to all those people out there that are people
Mhm.
pleasers. I love the people pleasers, they're givers. I kind of put myself in that space as well, but many times people pleasers leave themselves behind somewhere.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so when you wrote about the people pleaser, share with the audience your message to so someone who's a people pleaser might be able to do something maybe a little more effective than just pleasing people.
Yeah, I am a lifelong people pleaser. I come from one of the most beautiful people in the world who is also a people pleaser. Love you, mom. And I say that because I totally agree with what you're saying, Craig. There is an affinity and a gracious level of giving that people who are in that category of people pleasers put into the world. And one of the things that I think that I struggled with is this idea that I want to be able to add good to the world, but I also want to show up as who I authentically am.
Mhm.
And the skills that we teach really in crucial conversations and getting things done, especially, are things that I think started me on the path to understanding where those two things can actually collide because I think you can people please, and as you're saying, give so much of yourself, not leave anything left. Not that that sounds really like, oh, you're a great person. That's not how I want to make that sound, but you can give and give and give, and then not really respect who you are. And one of the things that this content has helped me do is move from a space where I'm always saying yes to feeling like I can start to actually support the people around me and be devoted to the people around me in more strategic ways. So, for many years, when I first started my professional career, and even into the last couple of years, I would always have on my yearly goals like, I want to learn to say no. And maybe it's having kids. It started a little bit before having kids, but maybe, that kind of accelerated it. It's allowed me to create some really strategic focus in my life and say, I absolutely love our community of facilitators and I want to make sure I support that community. And sometimes there are boundaries that you have to create to be able to do that well. Or I want to be able to be present in the moment with my kids, or I want to be able to respect their feelings about a situation. And that might mean that you have to create boundaries to really be able to please the people and give to the people that you really want to have beautiful relationships with, but also make sure that it's not taking you over.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that's hard. I think there are people, I heard this in a conversation earlier this week. There are people who are going to be upset with your boundaries, but it's usually because that impacts their relationship in the situation. And so sometimes that deserves a crucial conversation
Yeah.
or, something different. But I think that these skills have really helped me to go from that people pleasing mentality to saying what's good from this that I can still respect myself, my family, my friends, my colleagues, the people that I love in my life, and make sure that there's something left over at the
Yeah.
end, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Makes complete sense. Makes complete sense. And you mentioned like crucial conversations and getting things done. I never really would have paired those together, but as I've taught, I'm like, that is kind of
Yeah.
the secret sauce because
Mhm.
what I find so often in organizations, people need to be able to say no. So they need to be able to have
Mhm.
the conversation. But with getting things done, they're going to be their most effective, but they'll also, until that happens, they won't know what they can or can't say yes to. One thing David
Mhm.
Allen told me, he said, people will always overcommit if you don't know what you've
Mhm.
got because we want to be people pleasers or we want to be seen as a team player. We want our career to move forward, but it doesn't help if we're making commitments we
Mhm.
don't keep, we're putting other people
Right.
behind. And so many people say, well, that's just the way things are. No, it's not. That's why we have the
Right.
problems we have. And
Mhm.
it's that way because we haven't gotten good at having these conversations or holding our boundaries or showing those things that we can and can't
Yeah.
do. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just, when you mentioned that, I was like, that's the last year and a half, that's really driven home for me because, we have the whole thing with
Mhm.
quiet quitting. And I've seen it,
Mhm.
people not showing up
Yeah.
for things and how we need to hold people accountable and all of that. But I think we've created that ourselves by not setting boundaries, by not
Mhm.
teaching people. One of the things we say, coach first, motivate second. I
Right.
need to train people all of these things before I start trying to motivate them to do something more.
Right. And I think one of the gaps that sometimes is uncovered in that process of moving from a place of always yes to a place of always wait, I do need to create some boundaries is yes, I might want to show up and say I will always follow through on certain projects. But I also can really compare what I'm saying yes to with how I want to authentically show up in the world. And if what I'm saying yes to makes me a yes person, but it whatever the project is doesn't align with who I authentically am or the skills that I can bring to the situation, then it's probably the wrong yes, or
Mhm.
it's the wrong person, or it's the wrong fit for you in that moment during that time. And so I think that that is one way to consider kind of navigating some of that space a little bit differently is a yes is a yes in the situation, but is that yes the what right one for you?
Right. Good, good. Yeah, it's interesting. When we were talking about that, I remember I used to want to be the nice guy, and that was almost
Yeah.
people pleaser. And then I thought, well, what's the opposite? I'm going to be a jerk. No, I don't want to do that. What my internal story when I shifted this one little piece changed everything. I don't want to be the nice guy. I want to be the effective person.
Mhm.
Effective
Yeah.
people speak up when they need to. Effective people are respectful. Effective
Mhm.
people get things done. Effective people have integrity because people can depend on them.
Yeah.
Just that one shift in my own personal story began to shift everything in my life, and I love
Yeah.
that we do that same work. What is
Right.
your
Yeah.
favorite part of teaching people? What is the favorite thing you
Mhm.
get out of it?
Gosh, I don't know if I have one favorite. Can I share two favorites?
Please.
My first favorite that comes to mind is just about you. I mean, you and I have talked about our longevity with this content. Every single time I teach, I still learn something new. And I always want to be a lifelong learner.
Agree.
And that is one of the things I think is just really kind of keeps you connected in classes, to participants, to the work that we do. So that's the first thing that stands out is there's always something new to learn. There's always something, a different way to look at it. And two is really you look at the world and I never see a space where skills, refinement, improvement isn't needed.
Yeah.
I feel like there's always an opportunity to grow. Very often around my house, I will say things like, well, you had a moment of humanity. And it's not about
Oh,
what you did, it's what about what you did after what you did. And I think that both of those things and kind of catchphrases, if you will, that we say often around here just point to the importance of what we do. I am not somebody who could have been in the medical field. I have so much respect for people who can be, but I get the heebie jeebies so easy. So I look at it and say, this is how I add something good to the world.
that's great.
Yeah.
Now, as I think about your children, I always thought, God, I wish my parents would have taught me these skills
Yeah.
when I was a kid. And I'm so glad I learned them when I did. And they
Right.
did so much for me. And since I don't have kids, I always wondered what it'd be like if I could raise some kids knowing these skills. They'd
With
probably
these.
rule the world or something. But I didn't have them till later in life. And most people are sitting
Yeah.
there going, "Oh, wow, I wish I would have had these." Does that excite you to be able to teach them these things? Or do you think you're going to be their mom? They're just going to let it go. What do you think's going to happen?
Oh, you know, Couple of things. One, I have heard from other master trainers in our community and things like that that have said things like, I didn't think they were listening. And then they said something that was a line from our content. And I thought, oh, at least something's getting in there. And I think sometimes I have that perspective as well. It's like, well, you know what? Hopefully, if we use this, it will rub off on them. My husband and I also joke that if we use it too much, we could just mess them up even further. You never know. But I think at the end of the day, even if what we're talking about here is something that I can teach my kids, is to be able to have the hard conversations when you feel like it's important to do so, and also be able to respect your own boundaries and create a space where you can do good in the world. I mean, those I think are the things that we really go back to. I always ask my daughter, I say, what's my job as your mom? And she says, to keep me safe and make sure I'm loved. And I think both of those are principles that are in some way, shape, or form woven throughout our content. And if at the end of the day, that's what they walk away with, hopefully the therapy that they have to pay for will be minimal.
That's great.
If that makes sense.
It does. That's great. We all got to break free somehow, and that's
Right.
going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
was it you or someone else told me that Michael Poor said they come with their own baggage. You're just going to help them learn how to repack or something like
Exactly. That is I haven't heard that before, but I think that that's a really good way to put it, is like, you wanna respect who they are and how they show up in the world, and it's your job to kind of help guide them, and the way that I'm hoping to
that.
do that is, to make sure that they feel safe and loved.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
before we finish, I want to throw you one little curve. What
Yeah.
is one gold nugget you could give to the listeners of maybe a skill set to use or something,
Mhm.
an insight that would maybe help them as they engage in their lives, something that
Mhm.
is kind of a gold nugget for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Lately, when I think about the things that help me the most, is a combination of our content and just some self growth and exploration as well, is just this idea of checking in with yourself on a regular basis. And I think that that's some of the work that we do helps us do that. But whether it is from a wellness perspective, whether it is from a relationship perspective, or even just sometimes before you walk into a meeting, checking in with yourself and understanding where you're at and how you're showing up, because we all have good days, we all have bad days, we all have those moments of humanity. And you can change how you act and how you show up in different ways if you're consistently checking in with yourself and align the way that you're showing up with who you actually want to be in the world. Again, we all have those moments where it's not great, but then it's not what you did, it's what you did after what you did.
Exactly. Well, I love that because it's really get mindful and check yourself. And you can do it at any moment. If you blow it in the moment, you can change it the next. That's the other thing I
Mhm.
found. There's
Yeah,
typically always a different way out if you can get
yeah,
mindful enough to and turn that brain back on, because those brains are just
exactly.
really amazing, but they have to be on to work.
Yeah, exactly. On and just a way to engage them and be restful when you do it. There's lots of things that can contribute to all of that,
That's
right?
great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being a guest on our show. Thank you. And thanks for all the work you do and all the help you give me. Love you so much. Thanks so much.
We love you too, Greg. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks. And folks, thank you for watching A Shot of Inspiration. I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of A Shot of Inspiration. If you like this or any of our other episodes, make sure you rate it and share it with a friend. This is Greg Stevens, and we look forward to being with you next time. Until then, be bold, be courageous, and respectfully speak your truth.